In this section, we're going to be taking a look at just some of the general ecosystem changes, not taking a look at particles in this instance, but just the other effects that have been added. What I'm going to start with is just adding a terrain to a scene here, just a blank scene. And I'm going to go ahead and edit the material, and we're going to switch this over to ecosystem/particles. Which is one of the new changes. It's just now we have the ability to manipulate particles as ecosystems. We will look at that in depth in another section. So let's start by adding just some vegetation, selecting plant species, and I'm going to go ahead and drag in plum tree, and also add in, we'll use maple tree, cherry tree, and just these are fast loading instances, low polygon counts compared to some of the other species. We can throw maybe one higher res species in, the gnarly tree E, to add into that ecosystem. And go ahead and click OK. One thing you'll note is the presence has changed. In previous versions of Vue, presence was determined by a number. The higher the number, the more of the species would be generated in relation to the other numbers of presence. So say in this case we have 25% set for the presence for everything, which this will divide itself depending on the amount of instances in the population list. So if I add another one, it'll divide all of them by 5. So before, the presence would have been 1 for all of these, and then you would either lower the presence or increase that number to adjust the population throughout the ecosystem. So now we have a percentage that we can modify. And if we take a look on the right, a really cool new feature is the fast population mode. Now we can make changes to the ecosystem and see them basically real time as we make those changes. So if I go over to the density, I can decrease the density, and then the ecosystem will update. I'm going to go ahead and move this bar on the right over so we can see more of that ecosystem and the changes. Now another thing I want to do is switch this over to the billboard mode instead of the shaded billboard, because unfortunately shaded billboards are still about twice as large as they actually are in the scene, so it does make it a little difficult to determine exactly how full the ecosystem is. So fast population mode, very cool. We could change the presence. Let's go and do 10% for the plum tree. And then you can see it auto updates the percentages for the other instances. So anytime we make changes, it will adjust the ratio for the other instances automatically, which is really cool. We can still adjust distribution with a function, as we could before. And then we have more of that number-based system, not like the way the presence was before, but just falling within ranges of numbers. So that's remained the same. One thing I want to note about the fast population mode is that it is relative. It's not exact on the surface. And whenever you have an ecosystem generated with this mode, you do want to accurately reposition on surface. That's the button that's right next to the interactive population. So you can also run the fast population mode without the real-time effect or the interactive population, and then in that case what you need to do is repopulate. So I'm going to turn that back on so it's interactive. We can adjust the density. So then when you have it set, you just accurately reposition the instances, and then it will line them up to the surface. When you make another change to the ecosystem, let's go back and increase density, it will reset that. You will need to accurately reposition it once again. So that's something you want to make sure you do. And you can even turn off the fast population mode when you're done with that. And then you could have just your set population for an ecosystem. I'm going to go ahead and turn that back on for the fast population mode, just while we're looking at some of these other features. If we go ahead and select one of the instances within the population list, there are new buttons on the bottom which allow you to edit materials for that specific instance. So in this case we have the plum tree. We can see there's looks like 2 barks and a leaf. Go to the maple, we can see a bark for the maple leaf. So now we can edit these materials directly from the editor here, as opposed to going into what would be the library over on the right, the material library, and going to ecosystem materials, which is still another way to access and edit materials. I am going to go ahead and delete that terrain and add a sphere, just something simple here. Increase its scale, just size it up a bit. Edit the material, and I'm just going to re-add the same instances. They'll load very quickly because they're already kind of loaded into the memory for the scene. Turn on the fast population mode. We can see those showing up. We'll set that to billboard, increase our density. Now if we also take a look, we're going to see a 360-degree population under the density. So now what we can do is populate an object all the way around the surface with this new mode. In previous versions of Vue, ecosystem populations were a downward projection, so it would basically go from kind of the top view and project onto the surface that way. Now the projection can go all the way around the surface, and we're no longer restricted to that top view. We can also adjust the slope constraint. Now you can see it's a little bit off, and that's because I moved the object after creating the ecosystem. If we go over to fit it, actually I'm going to clear it, turn off the fast population mode, populate. That should work a little better. You can see that showing up. Now when the fast population mode is turned on, stacking is not allowed. So you cannot stack instances, which is a feature that was added in 10.5. So stacking is not available when the fast population mode is turned on. So in order to stack, or at least when the interactive population is turned on, it looks like just fast population mode in general. So now if I want to stack and populate, once that mode is turned off, it will work. Another feature that is unavailable for the fast population, interactive population, is if you're adjusting the affinity with layer and repulsion from layer. So I'm going to go ahead and select the default layer, ecosystem, and raise that layer up, and just add a plum tree and populate it. Actually, I'll go ahead and clear the other one so we can take a look at that ecosystem. Actually, I'll go ahead and bump that one up higher. And because the fast population mode is turned on, we cannot adjust the affinity or repulsion from layer settings. So those are unavailable when working with fast population mode. But it is a really great way to populate an ecosystem very quickly. Some very cool new features added in Vue 11.